My name is Jennifer Fluri, and I'm an associate professor in the geography department at CU Boulder. And I mainly focus on Afghanistan. However, I've done some research also in India and Pakistan, but mostly it's focused on Afghanistan. So when I was trying to figure out a dissertation research project, I was really interested in the idea of social movements, particularly social movements that were using education as a form of political resistance. And that's how I found Afghanistan, because I found them through this organization called the Revolutionary Association of the Women of Afghanistan, or RAWA. I started my Ph.D. in 2001, but it was right before 9/11. And so I'd found that organization just through the internet, actually. And they were running secret schools and doing all kinds of political activism, and they were a feminist organization. So I was really fascinated with them. But I also looked at their international supporters network and how they were using technology and how they were representing themselves locally and communicating their message in refugee camps in Pakistan. Because my focus has really been mainly Afghanistan, I wanted to understand international development and international geopolitics and conflict in Afghanistan from multiple perspectives. So since my dissertation, I focused on looking at the international community and the sort of spatial and gender influences and impacts that international aid and development had on Kabul city and also other parts of the country. And then that was followed by a project which was on Afghan women's civil society organizations and their roles in peace building and conflict mediation. And I'm continuing that work with a new project that is going to extend that to look at women's political influence at different scales, from the home to their communities to the nation in Afghanistan. And sort of looking at that through a geographic or spatial lens, since I'm a geographer. Okay, so well, I'm a social scientist, so most of the collection of research data for me mostly happens in the field, and that's mostly in Afghanistan. So mainly what we do is we meet with people and we interview them, or we run focus groups about whatever the particular issue is. Also, just being in a place, we do a lot of observation analysis of, for example, in Afghanistan, like how things have changed over the years. Because of the extensive reconstruction efforts since 2001 till today. So what's worked well, what hasn't worked well, those kind of things. Other types of research is I've worked a lot in the libraries at Kabul University and other public libraries in Afghanistan to collect archival data. What's left, a lot of that's been lost because of conflict, but some of it's there. So that's another interesting way to collect information. Interviewing officials in the government or people who are leaders in their communities. So one of the things I've done in the past is have people keep sort of diaries of their kind of daily activities, so we get a sense of people's mobility patterns and that sort of thing. And then the computer, sitting in front of the computer part, happens when you come home, and you need to code and analyze and write up those data points. Even though I would say that isn't as fun as the fieldwork, because I really like engaging with people and I like traveling, but it can be really exciting in an intellectual way to see it all come together. I try to incorporate my research into my teaching at any time possible. So, for example, I teach a Geographies of South Asia class, and we do a whole section on Afghanistan and Pakistan, as well as India, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Nepal, and Bhutan. Because I've had the opportunity to travel to Afghanistan, I've also traveled in many of those countries as well. And so that's helped me to collect more information, meet more scholars in those areas. It actually really enriches my teaching. You can only get so much of that from reading the book. And so having had some of been in a lot of these places and actually researched them, it helps you to communicate that information, I think, in a more lively way. I also run a global seminar in Prague in the Czech Republic in Maymester. It's amazing when you do any kind of research, you end up finding similarities and correlations in different places. So even though the Czech Republic couldn't be any more different than Afghanistan. Some like there's some similarities, like in the histories of occupation and war. So even though it's not my direct research, learning about a whole nother place, and this is where teaching comes in, right? Because I go there as an educator and I work, in collaboration with Czech friends and colleagues there, and I've learned so much about this other place that it's been just such a wonderful experience. So sometimes you get to the research through teaching. While it's can be also difficult because it's hard to teach and do research simultaneously, that we have to just come up with creative ways to make that happen, so that you can do as much research as possible, but still be able to be in the classroom as well. Well, first of all, research is incredibly fun to do, I think. I know I'm a nerd, but still. And I think caring about research, because it helps to understand how knowledge is produced. Because so much of the knowledge that we experience in our everyday life is through the media, which is great. Like journalism is really important to get that, right on the ground, everyday sort of information from different places in the US and across the world. But they don't have time to get really in-depth understandings of places. There's all different kinds of research, and I think just having the time and resources to really focus on a particular subject in depth, it can be such an exciting and rewarding enterprise if you're willing, of course, to put in the time and the energy to do it. The Europe program, the Undergraduate Research Opportunity Program, is a fantastic method or way to actually do independent research and get paid for it. So there's a variety of different opportunities, and then I also have had students do independent research for like a senior thesis, or just because they were really interested in exploring a particular idea. And then in addition to that, for geography students, we have the Stacy Von Drayden grant program, which provides funding for undergraduates to do independent research in consultation and under the mentorship of a faculty member in our department. So that's another opportunity